Hi everyone, I'm Garrett Weinzierl for the Arrowhead Center at NMSU, and I am back with more strategies for working remotely. Host of the Daily Tech News Show, Tom Merritt, is joining me again today to continue our talk about remote workplace security. Hi again, Tom.
Hey, welcome back to me and to you. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me back, Garrett.
So today we're going to be talking about stopping or doing everything as much as you can to mitigate the transmission of malware. As much of a headline as something like Zoom bombing was, malware is not just for downloading things you shouldn't. It can be transmitted through remote conferencing applications. Tom, what should we be doing in our home workspace now to make sure that we're not downloading or installing or just straight up receiving any sort of illicit files?
Yeah, and these tips also cover just inadvertent information leaking through the video conference if you don't want stuff to get out that shouldn't. So the one that really prevents malware is file sharing. Make sure that you don't allow file sharing in your video conference unless you absolutely have to. If your video conference software lets you control who can do file sharing and you need to have somebody pushing out a file, then yes, you can give it to that one or two people. That's still risky, but it's not as risky as letting everyone do it, because it's the way a lot of malware will propagate is to look for ways to share files and push them across and hope people open them and execute them. It may seem inconvenient to do that, but it is just safer to keep that function off, especially if you don't need it. If you're like, yeah, there's no reason we would want to share files here, or you know that the better way to share files is through Microsoft Teams or Slack or something like that, where people would have more access to it anyway after the video conference is over. There's benefits to just not sharing it temporarily that way as well.
Like, where do you fall on things like file sharing and screen sharing? Like, do you just keep them off by default, and unless it's absolutely necessary, you don't turn them back on?
Yeah, and it's good you brought up screen sharing. You're not necessarily going to transmit malware through screen sharing, but there is a chance that somebody shows a password or somebody shows a link or something gets across a video conference. A bigger risk if you're broadcasting that video conference, which some people do. Some people stream meetings. You got to be careful of screen sharing. And the same thing goes for screen sharing that's for file sharing. Turn it off by default. Only turn it on if you have to, and if you can, only turn it on, screen sharing or file sharing, for the people who absolutely will need it. I can see there being more reason for screen sharing. Certainly there are presentations where you're showing your PowerPoint and you got to have that on, but you should try to reserve it just for the folks who need it and not give it to everybody. And those people who are going to get that power should be very careful that they're only showing the thing that they wanted to show. And then file sharing, I think there's less of an argument for. It's just better to keep them all off if you can.
Right. If you keep them off by default, it might be a little bit of a pain point that you have to go and enable it when you absolutely need the feature.
Sure.
But that's just going to keep you more protected. You need to take that extra step.
Yeah, and that's the trade-off, right? We talked about that with Zoom bombing, and it applies here too. There's a trade-off between convenience and security, and you have to decide where that line is. But if you're worried about transmission of malware, and everybody is these days, it is safer to just leave it off by default, or leave it that the default is only the meeting organizer can do those sorts of operations. Again, depends on the software whether you can have that kind of fine-tuned control or not. But if you do, you can take advantage of it. So again, turn off screen sharing, turn off file sharing, and as we mentioned last time, stay patched. That is another way you can stop malware, because a lot of these, like Zoom, have ways to detect malware and stop it when it shouldn't be shared. So you want to keep those security patches up to date.
Absolutely. It's just good practice to keep every application that you use regularly up to date. I know you might run into a bug every once in a while and you have to go through that song and dance of reverting, but it's just a safer way to be on the web. So, Tom, you'll be joining me for one more of these, but for now, leave a comment below, everybody. I may just answer your question on a future episode, and be sure to like and subscribe to make sure that you get the next remotely. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
This video was brought to you by the New Mexico Economic Development Department, Office of Science and Technology.